Do you feel like no matter how many hours you draw, your art just isn't improving? After 25 years of drawing and teaching countless students, this is a stage I see every artist go through, which I call the teething period. My student Stina hit this same stage, struggling with proportions and getting frustrated with how slow her progress was. But after showing her just 5 simple steps, she transformed her work from this to this with only 30 days of drawing. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to break out of that teething period and start seeing real progress, the 5-step method that lets you easily create realistic portraits, and how you can start applying them to your drawings today. Okay, so step number 1, build your foundation. When I first started freehand drawing, I remember being super motivated, ready to knuckle down with the intention of creating something amazing, only to come out the other side 6 hours later frustrated with a headache and a warped portrait. I'd feel disappointed, I felt like I wasted a day, and this kept happening until I learned the importance and understood how to first draw a strong foundation. So let me show you this method so you can do the same. It works by simplifying the portrait into its most basic tonal shapes, and as a result it makes the portrait much easier to approach without getting stuck going into the details too soon. The biggest issue I see most artists make is skipping this foundation stage. As a result, they get trapped in this never-ending cycle of moving and shifting everything around because their proportions are wonky. Mapping out your tonal shapes stops that from happening because it gives you a strong foundation, and the stronger your foundation, the better your drawing. Think of it like building a house, right? The bricks, the walls, doors, cabinets, stairs are the equivalent to the eyes, nose, mouth, texture and hair. If you have a house with a poor foundation and you put all of this on top, the house is just going to fall apart. But if you have a strong foundation and then place everything on top, you have a beautiful house. It's the same with drawing portraits. So if you want to see the most amount of progression in the shortest amount of time, practice your foundations, because that's the golden key to unlock real transformation. But here's the issue. Most artists get stuck here for one simple reason. Let me show you why. Step 2, commit to one method. Most artists want clear, immediate results, but progress usually has a different path. Most artists get stuck here and drop off. Because they experience periods where their drawings dip after initially seeing progress, they assume it was either luck or somehow it just isn't now working for them. But what they're actually experiencing is the teething period, the stretch of time where progress is up and down and you're on the path of ironing out those challenges that come along the way. But instead, they either drop off or try something new. But here's the problem. If you're constantly trying something new every time you experience those dips, all you're doing is just resetting the journey and falling into that same cycle. So why is it so common that we experience these dips? Well, let me show you. Even though Stina made initial progress, she also hit those deeps where it felt like she was going backwards. Here's why this happens. Our brain can only really remember 3 to 5 things at once, but when we learn something new, you're usually taught 30 to 50 things, but that initial excitement kicks in, so you feel like you can retain more information. Early progress feels fast because simple changes result in big gains. But when that excitement slowly fades, only a few elements are truly retained, and then you see that dip. Imagine your brain is a small backpack and your teacher fills your bag full of knowledge. You're all excited and then you're off to the races, but eventually your bag starts to feel heavy. You start walking slowly, you might even trip over because your bag is too full. So what does your brain do? It starts taking things out and leaving in what you think is the most important and start walking again. But now you make even less progress because there's less knowledge in your backpack. So you have to go back and then repack your bag. So how do we get past this teething period and start seeing real results? Well, let me show you. Step 3, reflection. Have you ever finished a drawing that you don't like and you just looked at it and thought, where on earth did I go wrong? Or just as bad, you finished a drawing that you did like, but you have no idea how you got there. One of the biggest setbacks artists have is not knowing how to improve. Sure, teachers like myself will teach you exactly how to get to that point, but our job is also to teach you how to spot your own mistakes so you can keep improving by yourself. It's like when your parents potty train you. They teach you how to do it yourself. Could you imagine being an adult and your mom is still there trying to guide you? It's like, no, go away, it's weird. By saying I want to get better is as broad as saying I want a bag of shopping. Well, what kind of shopping? Clothes, food, electronics, a weekly shop, or just a bag of crisps? So how do we go from this really broad lost feeling to having a clear target to aim for? Well, you ask yourself 3 questions. What did I like about my drawing? What don't I like about my drawing? And what do I want to improve on next time? But why are these questions so powerful? Well, for 2 reasons. First, it breaks the cycle of self-doubt. A lot of artists hit this emotional wall because they get so caught up looking in the distance of where they want to be that they never look back at the progress that they've already made, which is exactly why people drop off. Second, it gives you clear direction on what to focus on next time. Stina would get really specific with these 3 questions, and it's this clarity that is the difference between staying stuck and seeing real results. Stina then started sending me work like this. Here's the trick. If you have a handful of things that you struggle with, instead of trying to fix all of them at once, just focus on one thing to improve on with each drawing. Now, even with this clarity, there's still one thing that trips up most artists. Step 4, consistency. Have you ever had a period where you just can't bring yourself to do any drawing? The idea feels exhausting, motivation is gone, and you keep telling yourself you'll get back to it, but days turn into weeks, weeks turn into months, and then sometimes even years. This is often down to 2 things. The first is burnout. Burnout usually happens because you aren't reaching your expectations. So for instance, imagine every drawing you did, you knocked it out of the park. Each time there is a noticeable amount of progression. As a result, it lights a fire underneath you and you're more motivated than ever to continue because you're seeing insane results. And you did that for 3 months straight. Compare that to someone who literally isn't making any progress at all. Every time they draw, it just stays exactly the same. They draw the same amount of hours as you do for the same 3 months. Who's going to burn out? The second is priority. Sometimes life happens, a change of circumstances. So you decide to put your drawing on hold and say you'll get back to it when you have time. Time passes and all of a sudden you feel like you've forgotten everything and you're back to square one. So how do you break out of this cycle and build real consistency? Well, there's no magic ingredient. It's more so just a practical shift. Set a realistic schedule you can stick to. Even if it's for like 2 hours a week. Stina didn't draw every day. There were periods that she was working double shifts and literally had 0 hours. But she always made drawing a priority with the time that she did have, even if it was small. And then she started producing work like this. The key is to keep showing up. Being consistent where it matters the most, such as the foundations and the tonal shapes, pays off far more than clocking double the amount of hours wrestling with what keeps you stuck, like going into the details too early. But let me show you the secret ingredient that takes progression, puts it into a rocket, and launches it. Step 5. Experimenting. Here's how I learned this the hard way. I was at a point where I hated my work. I focused on hyperrealism using the grid method, and even though I achieved good results, I hated the process, I hated that I didn't have a style, and I hated that my work looked like everyone else's who also did hyperrealism. But I kept drawing in the exact same way, using the exact same materials, and be frustrated getting the exact same results. For some reason, this took me years to finally understand that in order to get a different result, I need to do something different. It's like, how many times am I going to put my hand on the stove before I realize I shouldn't do that? Apparently, I'm a very slow learner. It wasn't until I ditched the grid method and I switched from only using pencils to also using charcoal powder that I fell in love with drawing again and I developed my own style. And Stina did the exact same thing. She moved from graphite pencils and experimented with carbon pencils, and then this happened. Practice what you know, your work will improve. Practice what you don't know, your work will evolve. This is truly how your work evolves, by experimenting. But here's the kicker. Before you decide to go out and buy these carbon pencils expecting your work to transform, you need to know 3 things. It wasn't the carbon pencils that made this happen. It was focusing what matters the most, such as the foundations and the tonal shapes, and also being consistent. Stina was drawing about 12 hours a week, which added up over the time that she's been working with me is only 30 days of drawing. This only worked because she learned the fundamentals, and as a result, she's now attracting commissions. Without that skill set, her work would still look like this regardless of what materials she would be using. There's no magic paper, there's no magic equipment, only materials that play to your strengths, which is exactly what these carbon pencils did. Progress doesn't just come from doing more, it comes from doing what matters. And if you want to see how I ditched the grid method and master proportions, then watch this video here.